Welcome into the inaugural edition of Carlos and the Fish. I am Seabass, the fish in this equation. And to the other side, you can see my good buddy Carlos. This is Carlos and the Fish, the first episode on the Walker Talks Radio Network. Chuck, it's great to have you, man. We're going to dive right in, brother. And one of the most important subjects that could possibly come around in the world of sports is the NFL quarterback. I don't know if there's a more pressure-packed position in the entire world of sports than a quarterback in the NFL. But we're going to talk about what great is. Who's great? We've got 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. We got Trevor Lawrence, who just got paid. We got Dak Prescott, who's looking to get paid. So I think today's episode is going to be about defining who and just exactly what a great quarterback is in the NFL. How's it going, Chuck?
There's a lot of interesting ways going good, a lot of interesting ways to look at it. So success would be the first way you would look at it, right? And if you're thinking success, and a quarterback they're not having to pay yet, but they are going to have to pay, is a guy like a Brock Purdy. And this is interesting because right now, you're not paying Brock Purdy anything. In NFL, I mean, now Brock Purdy makes more than money than I make, but that's, in NFL standards, he ain't making a lot. So you can do a whole lot with that space around him. That's how you give Christian McCaffrey an extension and a new deal, make him the highest paid running back in the NFL. That's how you can still have guys, on your roster, maybe pay Ayuk. You can do a whole lot on a rookie deal. But for me, when I'm looking at what do you do? How do you pay a quarterback? Do we think Brock Purdy can have the same results when you can't pay McCaffrey, you can't pay Ayuk, you can't pay a Debo, you lose possibly a Fred Warner? That's what I'm looking at when I'm talking about success. That's how I'm gauging it. Do they take you to the next level? And this is why, what was the stat of how many, like 70% of the teams that made the playoff last year or the year before, 70-80% of them had quarterbacks on a rookie deal. That's why you go get these rookies. These rookie deals are huge for teams, especially if you hit. And everybody's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. But Brock Purdy's, he's proven on a rookie deal, you build around him, guys like that, they can take you far too.
Yeah, Carlos is right. And that's why when you have somebody locked in, I mean, look, it's not the only reason why the Chicago Bears drafted Caleb Williams. It's not. But the ability to reset that rookie quarterback contract made all the difference in the world. Now, the upside for Caleb Williams is at least projected higher than that of Justin Fields. However, you already had a couple of years of service with Justin Fields, and it was going to be time with another year or so to start renegotiating. And you had to ask yourself, am I really going to commit this kind of money to Justin Fields? We haven't went anywhere. So what you do is you make that move. See, the move to move Justin Fields, I mean, there was a reason he was out on an express train to Pittsburgh because they could not have him in that locker room. But they reset that entire contract for their franchise quarterback, and now it gives so much flexibility to do all the other things. You want to give a young quarterback success, put weapons around him, not just on offense, but both sides of the football. And when you are beholden to these monster anchor contracts, you can't really do that. And a big-time quarterback contract takes up a huge chunk of your roster. So if you have a chance to reset that and not lose anything from an ability level, if you will, and maybe even raise it, that's an easy move right there. But let's do this on today's episode. Let's go through the NFL and try to figure out who's great, what's great, and what is it worth? Because we throw that term around, Carlos, great, all the time, and it is such an overused term when it comes to describing quarterbacks. So don't get me wrong. I happen to feel like, especially with the way the NFL has catered to offense right now and the passing game, we are in an unprecedented era. There is a bunch of very, very good quarterbacks, a couple of great ones, but there are very few teams that have nothing at quarterback. And we've seen the times where there's a couple great quarterbacks and then just a bunch of whatever. But that is not what the NFL is at right now. And you go ahead and start rattling off the teams that are doing anything in this league with ho-hum quarterbacks. That's just not the way it works. So let's do this, Carlos. Let's start off in the AFC and try to determine some things. Let's try to figure out who's great. Let's start off with the AFC East. Of course, everybody knows, and if you're watching this, you know well that there are 4 teams in every division. All right. So let's take a look at that. Let's start at the AFC East. I don't think anybody is going to argue that Josh Allen is a great quarterback at this point. And he
No.
defied the odds. We talked about this when he was drafted. 56% completion percentage, I believe it was, at Wyoming, in one of the worst defensive leagues in all divisions in all the entire landscape of college football, and he was sub 60%. So that led so many people to say, he's big, he's great, he's got that arm, but is this Ryan Leaf? This is not Ryan Leaf by any stretch of the imagination. He has it all. The problem is in Buffalo, you've kind of taken his toys away from him. He, as a complete roster, not only on the defense, on his offensive line, of course, losing Gabe Davis and some guy named Stephon Diggs. So he's going to have to prove that greatness. But Josh Allen is great. You look at the rest of that division, and I'll come right to you and see what you think about this. Obviously, the situation in New England, we can't say yet. We'll find out soon enough, but they're going with the rookie quarterback here. In New York, Aaron Rodgers, let me ask you this, and I'm talking about current status. He has nothing to prove to anyone. Not really. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to go down. If he never throws another football, he's going down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game. My question to you, Carlos, is Aaron Rodgers great as an NFL quarterback at the moment?
Well, we don't know. What was he hurt? 4 snaps into last season? We don't know. His last year in Green Bay, he's still really good. He's still Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, for one season, can they be good with what they have, with the weapons they have, and that defense? Can they be good? Can he be good once? Yeah. You know what it reminds me of there? And you're going to think it's, oh, well, because of, they both played at Green Bay. But the guy who he took his place, Brett Favre, had an MVP caliber season in Minnesota. A lot of people think that team should have gotten to the Super Bowl from the NFC. He was an old guy too. So do I think Aaron Rodgers could do it once this year? Yeah, possibly. Now, for the future, no, of course. I mean, they're in some trouble, right? They're going to be picking high. I guess you hope you get as much as you can right now, then you address it eventually. But yeah, for a season, Garrett Wilson, some of those.
Well, I don't know how high they're going to be picking. Well, I think you may be really underselling that Jets defense, man. The Jets, the Jets are, to me, and really that division's wide open now. Buffalo owned it last, they loved the best team, but and then in Miami, you have to ask yourself, Tua Tagovailoa, is he a great quarterback? Yep. No. Is he a perfect fit in Miami? Absolutely.
Jets win that division. I really believe. I think they could be good for a year. I'm saying whenever, this year, next year, 3 years from now, whenever Aaron leaves, that's when you have to reset everything. Everything. You've got an older quarterback making a ton of money. If everything works, you're not going to be picking high, right? And he's going to just leave, and then you're going to have a year of, oh man, what do we do now?
So are we saying that there is one great quarterback in the AFC East?
Yes.
I mean, that's how I feel about it. I think there are two other very, very, very good ones and one surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, but at the moment, and especially coming off a season-ending injury for a team he's really never played for, so we'll see. But I love Lazard. I love Wilson. I mean, he's got weapons. There's no doubt about that. But we're trying to determine who's great. We think there's one in the AFC East.
And Tua's right there when it comes to these contracts, and we talked about Lawrence getting paid. Man, Tua's right there. Is Tua great, or does he have two unbelievable receivers in Hill and Waddle? Does he have the perfect coach for him in McDaniel? Do you pay that guy? I think Tua and Brock Purdy are the two most interesting quarterback conversations in all of the NFL. Not count the rookies, right? What could we see? I'm talking about the guys that we know in the NFL. I think it's two. I think it's Brock Purdy and I think it's Tua. When you're talking about quarterback leagues, for the longest time, you can remember people saying, well, Tom Brady's so great because he had Bill Belichick. Well, Tom Brady was great without Bill. You tell me how great Bill is without Tom.
We knew that wasn't the case when he went to Tampa. And they go right down there and win the Super Bowl title. So we know that's the case. All right, for the purposes of moving along, because we're 10 minutes into this, so we're only in our second division. Let's go to the AFC South. And now, look, if we're talking long plays right here, This could
Oh,
be the division for quarterbacks.
yes.
We already know that Stroud is hit. That's a for certain. Trevor Lawrence just got about 276 million. I'll say
Dollars.
this. I like Trevor Lawrence, and I think that Trevor Lawrence might be a victim of where he was drafted and the hype, because I don't believe he is elite, or at least he hasn't flashed elite traits. He's flashed very good, solid quarterback play at times, not elite play. And I had people telling me that this was the next, you name it, he was going to be the one. And that's not been the case. And I know Jacksonville did get a division title, and that's great, and that's wonderful. But he has not ascended to that level. And I will say this: I think they've done a great job of surrounding him. They constantly, every time they gave Christian Kirk $82 million, we all scoffed. What in the hell are you doing? $82 million for Christian Kirk? I like Christian Kirk quite a lot. And while I don't know that I would have given him quite that much, he's played that way. So, I mean, it's hard to call that a big fat mistake. They bring in Gabe Davis. They've got weapons there. And so I like him quite a bit.
Brian Thomas Jr.
Oh, yeah, drafted him in the first round out of LSU. You look at Will Levis in Nashville. Will Levis, okay, look, they went out and they drafted his I'm assuming his left tackle in J.C. Latham out of Alabama. But you give him. Now you go out and you give him true weapons. Now they go out and they bring in a 3 in Tyler Boyd, which I understand what last year was in Cincinnati, and he's the odd man out. But Tyler Boyd has stacked up good football on top of good football. You give 92. Well, it's with Calvin Ridley, you give $92 million. I like Calvin Ridley quite a bit. I think he is A1, but you'll watch this show long enough, you'll hear me say this many a time. Being someone's one doesn't make you a one. It's just you're the best they've got, so you're their one. That's not a true one. I'm talking about the elite of the elite. You know them when you see them. Is he that? He's capable. Of course, you got Nuke Hopkins there as well. Will Levis will have options, which is something that the passing game in Nashville has not had very much of over the last few years. He'll have those if the offensive line gels well. I was a big fan of Will Levis coming out of Kentucky, more so than others. I think he's got a chance to be very good. You look in Indianapolis, and Anthony Richardson, he played for a cup of coffee. It's crazy because he wasn't winning the games. When he would go out, it was crazy because Gardner Minshew would come in and end up pulling the win out one way or the other. But what we did see was a skill set that is not really comparable to anybody else in the NFL. He's put on more muscle. They've added A.D. Mitchell. There's everything to like. He gets the entire offensive line back. He gets Jelani Woods back. That's huge. They have everything coming back. That offense, if it hits right, and he went out of an OTA the other day with a little bit of sore type deal. It wasn't anything big. He said if it was a game next day, he'd probably play. So it'd have been fine. He has the ability. The elite traits are all there. The traits, from a trait standpoint, from a physical standpoint, his were as good as any quarterback that has ever come into the NFL. But he has to stay healthy. Duh. Everybody knows that, and we get that. But the upside is absolutely there. And then you look over in Houston. Now, I told you when all those quarterbacks were coming out together, if I could have any one quarterback, and everybody screamed Bryce Young, I said, you give me C.J. Stroud. And the reason I took C.J. Stroud is because he had by far the fewest concerns, question marks. He could move when necessary. Everybody acts like he's a stationary pocket quarterback because he doesn't choose to run unless it totally breaks down. And now you give this sucker Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stephon Diggs.
With
it's
Danielle
almost
Hunter
unfair.
signed in the offseason. Give him another edge rusher on his defense with Hunter in the offseason.
I can't hear you, Carlos.
You give him Danielle Hunter in the offseason.
No. Okay, so while Carlos is checking that, I'm going to roll with this because I cannot hear him. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look. So, and by the way, C.J. Stroud, absolutely. If I can't, and even and I'll tell you, as a Colts fan, if I can't truthfully come out and say that C.J. Stroud is elite, then I have an issue. And I'm not being truthful, and I have zero interest in doing that because CJ Stroud is 1,000% elite. He's got all the throws. He's smart as a whip, extremely competitive. You've given him an amazing bunch of weapons. It's one of the biggest turnarounds of a franchise that I think I have ever seen in my entire life. And it was in the course of an offseason. It's absolutely amazing. I've never even seen anything like that. They went from being the worst franchise, Carlos, in the entire league to being a division winner whose arrow is pointed maybe higher up than anybody's in the AFC.
It is amazing. And how thankful are they?
Nah, Carlos, you keep working, buddy. I'm going to keep doing this while you're doing that, hammering out. So we know for sure we have an elite quarterback in the AFC South. There's two. We go to the AFC North. This isn't going to take long because they've got some great ones. Is Lamar Jackson elite? Of course, Lamar Jackson is elite. And now you give him Derrick Henry. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch him. I think the Ravens, when you look at all that they've done in the offseason, as good as they were, and I'll be honest with you, and I told Carlos this, and doesn't always work out that way and is what it is. Chiefs ended up winning it all. I felt like the Ravens were the best team in the NFL last year. And the problem that you have, though, is that doesn't matter if you don't come through when the money's on the line. And the money was on the line, and you had to go to Baltimore to beat them, to keep them from going to the Super Bowl. And that's exactly what happened. But, Kansas City's like that, and we'll get there to them. So does Baltimore have an elite quarterback? Of course they do. Does Cincinnati have an elite quarterback? Of course they do. Joe Burrow is everything you could possibly want, and he has an amazing set of weapons. Losing Brian Callahan to me hurts a little bit. It does. But Joe Burrow is such a phenomenal football player. Another one with all the throws. Let's go just down the road to Cleveland. Is Deshaun Watson an elite quarterback? Boy, now this is probably the hardest one for me of all, because I have watched that man flash some elite traits in Houston since he's been in Cleveland. And that's not a huge sample size, but since he's been in Cleveland, it's not exactly elite football. He's put some good football together. There's no doubt about that. But it's interesting because, and maybe not having Nick Chubb certainly hurt that last year, and they continue to build on that wide receiving core in the offseason, and that's what they needed to do. The offensive line should be solid. I'm going to tell you what, if you're not buying stock in the Browns right now, as long as they can stay healthy and Nick Chubb comes back the way that he was, you should be, because there's not a lot of holes on that team on either side of the football. I have seen Deshaun Watson flash elite football, but it's been a minute, so I'm not ready to call him that. So what we're going to do is we're only going to give the AFC North 2 elite quarterbacks. That's 4 so far. That is Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, and Josh Allen so far, as we head over to the AFC West. Hello to my friends in Denver out there. Hope you're having a great day today. This conversation is not really for you right now. Let's go to, Las Vegas. Same thing. It's a ditto for you guys. But let's take a look at the other 2 quarterbacks in that division. Now, it occurs to me that 15, I'm not going to be going out here on some gigantic limb. It occurs to me that Pat Mahomes is the best quarterback that I've ever seen in my life, in any level, at any time. He is the perfect quarterback. He stays healthy, and when he's not, he plays anyway. He is the ultimate team leader. He is the ultimate representative for a franchise, for the league. Forget the franchise. Forget Kansas City. It's the whole freaking league. He is everything that you could possibly, if you were dreaming up and putting in a lag of Gargamel, we're trying to build the perfect quarterback to kill the Smurf Village. It would look like Pat Mahomes. He has every throw. His football IQ is off the charts. He's already won, 3 Super Bowls? And he's still in his 20s. I mean, this is a guy who could rewrite everything. And I know, I get it. Titles are what matters. And by the way, he's on that trajectory too. But the skill set, go ahead and tell me what he cannot do at an elite level. I've never seen anybody have every single aspect of their game be elite. I mean, if you'd have asked me before, John Elway, if you'd asked me Peyton Manning, I look at these guys and say at times there were things that they were a little bit limited on. Not so much Elway, because that dude, you just couldn't kill that guy. He was great. And Peyton Manning was my favorite quarterback of all time, just about. But there's nobody like 15. Nobody. And I've seen them all. And man, look, don't talk to me about Bart Starr and all. And I love them, and they're great, and that's wonderful. But if I were to take Bart Starr and put him in his prime in Kansas City's offense, he is probably not making the team, to be honest with you. But maybe he does. Who knows? Love Bart Starr. I'm sure he's great. But the fact of the matter is that the level of elite player that they're facing right now is greater than it's ever been by a long way. And I understand everything's relative, but he has the fewest question marks of any quarterback I've ever seen. So if that tells you who I think the best player in the league is, you probably already know. Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. Look, my esteemed colleague Carlos, he has him way up there, and so do I. Problem I've got for him right now is you just lost your two best weapons in the passing game. You know, Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer. Is that going to get it done? Now, Lad McConkey could be a lot of fun. He should be a lot of fun to watch. And I think he's going to be a huge weapon for that. But in Harbaugh's offense, he's going to run around the football, period. He has got two book franchise-type tackles now, and he's going to try to run that ball. And I don't blame him. But I think McConkey is going to wear them out on those seam routes. I think it's going to be great. But Justin Herbert also, he doesn't take off because he doesn't. That's not what they do generally. But that doesn't mean he can't. Go back and look at his organ. That dude can roll. He can move. He can absolutely move. Monster arm. They have the shortcomings of the Chargers have less than nothing to do with him. Nothing. So here's what I'll say. We have 6 elite quarterbacks in the AFC. Let's flip over to the NFC. Let's start with, what do you think? The South? Let's go to the South. Well, our old friend Neil calls it, a big fat goose egg? There are no elite quarterbacks in the NFC South. There are none. Kirk Cousins in Atlanta has a chance. He'll have some weapons around him, and all he's ever done is produce. But I've never looked at Kirk Cousins. Now, he wins. He puts up numbers. He does well. But I've never looked at him and said, this guy is elite. He's been good across the board. He's a 10 to 15 range quarterback and has been for a long time, and I will take that all day long as a franchise. Mm-hmm. But there's a reason Minnesota wasn't playing for Super Bowl titles. Because I need better than good. I need elite. He's not one. There are none in the NFC South. Am I going to write Bryce Young off yet? No. But the reality is they're a long way. They're a long way from truly being competitive. I know, and Baker Mayfield got $100 million, and I like Baker, and he could play for me because he's a battler, and people like to go to battle with players like him. He's the kind of guy I want to play for. He's not elite. He's a pretty good quarterback, and he can get the job done for you. And I can live with Tampa spending $100 million on Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield is good enough to keep Tampa winning the division. A lot of people think Atlanta, and that's the game here, because the fact of the matter is that roster's nowhere near a Super Bowl roster, but it is good enough to win in the NFC South. And then in the Big Easy, man, I don't know, man. Crescent City, I know Derek Carr. They say Derek Carr is ready to have a big season and do his thing this year. I think he's nowhere close. And as Carlos points out, 3 defensive coaches, and that has a lot to do with it. But I think as we see what happens in the NFL right now, that's only going to take care of you so far these days. That's just the way this league is structured. So none in the South. Let's go. What's the direct opposite of the South? The North. Let's go to the North. Do we have elite quarterbacks in the North? I don't care if he was the first quarterback taken in the history of the game. I'm not calling Caleb Williams elite because he hadn't played yet. His skill set is there. Let me tell you something. That pocket presence and watching him getting chased last year by Latu. Latu should have had 15 sacks in that game, and would have if it had been anybody besides Caleb Williams, who has a pocket presence that is even better than Bryce Young's. And understand this, Bryce Young's pocket presence is by far the best and most attractive thing about him. And in Carolina, I mean, he had no shot. There was nothing for him. He couldn't do anything. So his pocket presence didn't even matter. He didn't have nobody throw it to. He had nobody run the football. He had nobody block for him. So that really didn't matter. So that's a long work in progress for sure. But I'm not calling Caleb Williams elite by any stretch. Minnesota, clearly they're going with a rookie quarterback. Boy, I tell you, what am I looking at here? Darnold looking good in Minnesota. That's great, but this is about elites. This is about elites. There's two other teams in that division. Okay, I have to make sure that I'm not penalizing him because the results have been great for the last couple of years, and that's Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a elite. Jared Goff could quarterback my team all day long. And what is our definition of elite? Does that mean that they have to be able to run if the play breaks down? It would certainly help. It would certainly help. But what they have got going in Detroit right now, are you bringing the house? I dare you. I dare you to bring the house. Jared Goff will pick your face apart. And even though they drafted Hendon Hooker last year, they made no bones about it. This is our guy. This is our franchise. This is the cornerstone of our franchise. He plays that way, and the team reacts that way around him. They give him their best. You're also talking about a number 1 overall pick, which should not matter here. So I have to make sure that I don't do that. But if I can't call what he's doing, am I going to really hold 3 years ago in Los Angeles against Jared Goff when I'm watching him stack great football on top of great football? How about this? Jared Goff is diet elite. Can you live with that, friends? He's diet elite. I will take, and that is not a sham. And then there's one more. And then there's one more quarterback in that division, and that is Jordan Love. And I got to tell you, I'm so happy for Jordan Love. I don't care a flipping thing about the Packers, to be honest with you. But I don't hate him. But Jordan Love, Jordan Love, he just sat there and listened while everybody said, this, yeah, y'all did all this. And for this guy, and he can't this, and he can't that. And not only that, you take Devontae Adams away before he ever really gets in and gets going. Didn't matter. Unless you were a Packer fan or a diehard fantasy football fan, you did not know that Green Bay Packer wide receiving core last year. Do not lie to me. You didn't know. And he made them look like they were elite. And maybe they are. But you know who else looks elite? Their quarterback. I'll get scared for calling him elite this early in the game. But I don't care because I know what I saw. Now, if you were to ask me, would I rather have Jordan Love or Jared Goff, and I just called one diet elite and the other elite, does that mean that I would rather have Jordan Love in Detroit than Jared Goff? No. Jared Goff is perfect for Detroit, and he plays elite football there. He flashed some elite football at times in Los Angeles. You could say, well, yeah, boy, they had to get rid of him to get a Super Bowl. Really? That was all Jared Goff? That was just Jared Goff? I don't think you believe that. I know I don't. But Jordan Love truly does have an elite skill set. Now, it's a small sample size, and I understand that. But given what he overcame and what he had to work with, I see no reason why he regresses. There's zero reason for him to regress. So I really only see an ascension. So what I see is a guy who, all right, Carlos, I won't quite say elite, but he is knocking on the door. And if there is anybody on this list who would be my first person in there, it's going to be him or a guy that Carlos was talking about a minute ago, and we'll get to him in just a second. Let's do this. I'm going to put Jordan Love and Jared Goff together to make one elite quarterback. Half. Call them a half, 3/4, whatever. So I'll say there's an elite there, none in the South. Boy, I tell you one thing, and of course, the East and the West better have a ton of them if they're going to be anywhere near the AFC, because in the AFC we had what we called 6. Okay, let's go to the NFC East. Oh, boy. Dak Prescott, who I do not hate the way most people do. I don't. I think the Cowboys have issues, but is Dak's problem is showing up in the big games. Truly, and that's unfortunately, guys, that's not unfortunate. No, that's fortunately. That's right. It's not unfortunate. It's right. That's how we should be doing this. I like Dak Prescott quite a bit. The first part of his career was spent not throwing it to the other team. He was very efficient. The question is, has he ascended to the level that we had hoped? If you're a Cowboys fan, I don't think so. But if I've just put up his numbers, the graphic on his numbers, you're like, oh man, this guy's yeah. But it always seems to be something missing. And is it a Dak thing? Is it because he was a 4th round pick? No, not at all. Because he's flashed, but he's not an elite quarterback. And Daniel Jones is certainly not an elite quarterback. And well, I will tell you this: I'm very high on Jaden Daniels. He's got to do it first. He's got to do it first. So no rookie's getting that moniker for me. None. Then that leaves Jalen Hurts. A year ago, we'd have been talking about top 5 quarterback. We were talking about top 5 quarterback. We absolutely were. And had they won the Super Bowl against Kansas City, we would definitely be saying that. But he loses, and people need to realize how big a loss Shane Steichen was for Jalen Hurts. It's just the truth. Now you say, well, you're supposed to be able, you can overcome a coordinator change, and yes, you can. But they didn't upgrade. Shane Steichen's as good a play caller as there is anywhere, and all you have to do is look at the quarterbacks that he has had under his tutelage in the NFL, and there isn't one that has failed. They all produce, and in a very, very big way. It's going to be interesting to see how this works. And now, let's not forget, and now you bring in Saquon Barkley into that outfit. And look, they've had solid runners. They have. There's no doubt about that. But this is the best that they have had. And he can do everything. But that power game with that offensive line and that secondary, Philadelphia to me is primed for a bounce back here in a big way. This is not about the roster. The roster is there. But it was such a decline, as about the only way I know how to put it. So I'm not going to call Jalen Hurts elite. I can't do it. But if he bounces back and has a year like 2 years ago, then I have to vault them up there and put him maybe in past Jordan Love and Jared Goff. But still no elites. Still no outright elites in the NFC. And we're down to one division. And Matt Stafford has had an elite career as a quarterback, but he's not an elite quarterback at this moment. Kyler Murray, no chance. No chance. Now, I think they could be in for a bounce back too, with Marvin Harrison being there too, and they've got weapons there in Arizona. We'll see. But it's also not always been about the actual play itself. As this is what it seems. It just seems something. The fire. Maybe there's a fire. The passion. The refusal to lose, if you will, just doesn't seem to be there for me. That leaves us with two teams. Seattle. Is there a franchise quarterback in Seattle? I like Geno. He's not an elite quarterback. He made the Pro Bowl 2 years ago. Doesn't make him elite. And then there's Brock Purdy. I don't believe in punishing people because they have weapons. I don't believe in punishing people because they have outstanding offensive lines. I don't believe in punishing people because they have great play callers. Just because here's what I know to be true. If you're out there and Brock Purdy had been the first pick in the draft and he had put up the results that he has put up in the first 2 years of his career, you'd be calling him Joe Burrow almost. But because he was Mr. Irrelevant, and I try not to, but I know that there's many out there that look at that and they're never going to be able to separate. That's how we define him. That's what we call him. Oh, man, we don't say, the great quarterback for the 49ers. Oh, Mr. Irrelevant. That's what we think about. We think about him being the final pick in the draft. But when you hear and you heard those veterans, and in that in that locker room, one of the most alpha male veteran locker rooms in the entire league, maybe the most. And they all were like, look, yo, this guy, he comes in and he gives nobody any quarter. He ain't having that shit. It's his huddle. And that was his Mr. Irrelevant. Didn't blink. So if it doesn't matter to him and the play doesn't look at that, then why should I tag him that way? The answer is I shouldn't, and just call him for what he is, an elite football player. I know a lot of people are going to say he wouldn't be if you put him on. Well, okay. Let's take every good quarterback and put him on a shitty team and see what that looks like and see what we call him then. Because we're going to be able to say that about all of them too. Now, the Pat Mahomes is going to make any team win. But Pat's better than you and me and everybody else in the whole world. But Brock Purdy plays elite football. Brock Purdy puts the ball where it's supposed to be almost every time. Brock Purdy makes the right reads. Brock Purdy rarely locks on to one guy, so it makes it very difficult for defenders. I mean, he processes things amazingly. So I'm going to go with the results here and not give a damn about where he was drafted. I'm going to do something, and maybe if you're out your mind, I'm calling Brock Purdy elite. And if I call Brock Purdy elite, then that means I'm saying he's the best quarterback in the NFC. Who am I going to put ahead of him? Who am I going to put ahead of him? So that's 6-1. So one more thing before we wrap it up for the first day. Where does Brock Purdy rank if he were in the AFC? So apparently we have 7 of 32. Just a skosh over, what is that, 20%? Yeah, just a skosh over 20% that play at what we're calling an elite level. And Carlos has Jordan Love over Brock Purdy, and I won't push back all that much. I think they're probably the two best. But I'm taking Brock Purdy because that dude's just a winner. And by the way, they didn't not win this year because of him. You know, they lost because they were playing 15. And 15 is better than everybody. And that's where we're at right now. So 7 elite quarterbacks in this league and a bunch of real good ones. And you'd have to scratch. There are fewer bad starting quarterbacks in this league right now than there are elite, which makes this a great time for the NFL, and especially if you love offense, if you love the passing game. We got a whole new crop of rookies coming in too. We'll see what all that looks like. You know, we'll look at this episode a year from now and do another one like this a year from now, and things are definitely going to change for certain. But there's our first episode, our first look. The true elite of the NFL, we'll say 7 of 32. My name is Seabass. This has been Carlos and the Fish on the Walker Talks Radio Network. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.